Okay, so now we know all of the different types of squash that you can purchase. Let's figure out how to eat them. So this is a spaghetti squash, like Marianne had pointed out, and we have previously cooked one of these. So the easiest way to cook a squash, if you can cut it, is to cut it in half, and I'm going to show you that demo. Scoop out the seeds, put it into some kind of a dish. I always put a little water in the bottom, a lot easier to clean after that. And then you cook it at 350 or 400 until your fork goes through really easily. Now this is cooled, so it's a little bit harder, but the flesh on the inside is to be soft, and then you know it's done. So let's take a peek at that, and let's see why they call this a spaghetti squash. So flip it over gently. Now it is much cooled, it's much cooled down. You wouldn't be able to do this coming right out of the oven. So if you take a fork and you just draw the fork up the middle of the spaghetti squash, or draw it down, you will see that all of those segments are all long strands that look just like spaghetti. Oh, there we go. That's coming along better now. So look at that. So if you think that your kids need to eat more vegetables, then cook up one of these, have some spaghetti sauce, maybe some meatballs or some chicken balls and put on top, and then they might not even know the difference because this spaghetti squash tastes wonderful and it has a very similar texture to a spaghetti noodle. So it's pretty amazing what we can do with those. All right, so now you know what a spaghetti squash looks like and how to eat that. There's a few ways to cut some squashes. Maybe let's start with this one. So this time of year, when they're coming in the end of September, early October, they're very heavy because they're very moist. They're full of a lot of water because they just came out of the field, just freshly picked. And they're very hard on the outside. They tend to get a little bit softer as they sit for a longer period of time. So if you have a microwave and you want to throw it in for a minute or two, that will soften the skin. You can fully cook a squash in the microwave if you would like. So I'm going to try. We'll see if we can cut into this. What you don't want to have is something rocking around with hands close by your knife. So again, you need a strong, sturdy knife that doesn't bend. Bendy ones might break. It might hurt your hand. So a couple of ways to do this squash is we could roast it. So you can cut it in half and then cut it in sections, but I'm going to try to see if we can just cut down these natural lines in there so that we can then just rub oil on both sides and roast it just like we did before with the parsnips and carrots. So let's see how hard this is. It is good and hard, so if you put the tip all the way through down, then this side is not sharp. Hopefully you can pull your knife and get some height on it, and pull your knife all the way down to the bottom of the squash. There we go. We get your knife back out again. So just stick your tip down there, rock it all the way down, and then we're going to turn it a little bit and see if we can get to that second little crease in that squash. There we go. So remember, the squash is still going to be filled up with the seeds, but look at that beautiful color. And you can save those seeds, dry them out, and then plant them next year. That's how squashes propagate. So we've got the seeds in there. We're just going to scoop them out. And squashes, as Marianne had said, are totally related to pumpkins. So if you want to cook those seeds up and eat pumpkin seeds, we spend a lot of money to buy those things, but you can have them naturally. So then you can brush your oil. I have a little bit of oil here. You can brush your oil. You have one of these or just a paper towel on all the sides. And then you can stick that in the oven at 425 degrees. That'll probably take about 15 to 20 minutes to cook up. It is a solid piece. Fill your tray up with squash pieces, and then you'll have roasted squash. And then each person gets a section. and then they'll be nice and soft. They can just stick their fork in and then just pull it apart. The other way to cut that up is just to cut that in half. And cut that in half like that. And I just don't want the seeds to go everywhere. There we go. And then you can scoop the seeds out, and because it's a half and it's flat, then you just scoop the seeds out and then you just can cook it like that. So many different ways to cook squash. I just find that peeling a squash like this is very difficult. So the other way to get squash is already cut up in a grocery store in the frozen section. So this is new, probably just a couple years now that I've started to see squash in a bag in the freezer. I have to admit it doesn't taste quite as good. I have tried it as the fresh stuff, but a wonderful option if you have hand cramping, if you have arthritis, and you can't cut a squash. This is definitely doable, so you can enjoy it that way. The other thing I wanted to mention was, because pumpkins are, like Marianne said, related to squash, and if you're making a pumpkin pie and you have one of these, just cut it in half like we did here, scoop out your seeds, stick it in your pan, and there you go. You've got roasted pumpkin. You can scoop out the inside flesh and make a pumpkin pie, or just put a little bit of butter and salt on it, and then you've got pumpkin, and you can tell them that it's squash, and then they'll enjoy it just the same. So there you have it, folks. Many ways to cook up a squash. Hard to cut it unless you throw it in the microwave for just a couple of minutes. Then it's a lot softer, and you can do that no problem. Eat your seeds if you want to, and then you can enjoy it that way.